Hey guys, welcome back to another Coding Flamingo video. Today we're going to look at the difference between Writer, Visual Studio, and Visual Studio plus Resharper and get my opinion on them. You can see in the chapters below, so I'm going to go through pricing, then performance, then my opinion on which one to get performance-wise, then my opinion on some of the features, and kind of like the conclusion at the end. As you can see, I have already made a video like this in the past. This one is just the IDEs have changed in the year and a half. And I have changed. I used to use Visual Studio. Now I use Writer for most of the stuff. I'll address some of the comments that I got some stuff wrong. For example, the to-dos are both in Visual Studio and in Writer. It's a really cool feature. You just have to show it in Visual Studio. Let's start with pricing, as I promised. So first of all, Visual Studio for individuals is free. So huge advantage there. You can't really beat free. However, if you're a business, you have to pay $45 per user per month versus Writer for individual user, $14 a month or $149 a year. And then for organizations, $419 a year or $41 a month. Very close on the organization side of things. It ends up being very close on both of them. Like you're basically $3 away from one and the other. I do also recommend for both of them getting GitHub Copilot. I haven't tried their new, they just came up with their new GitHub Copilot competitor with JetBrains. I'm going to definitely check it out soon, and I'll do a comparison between the two of them. So make sure to subscribe. But for right now, I use GitHub Copilot. It pays for itself in the amount of time it saves me. So definitely recommend it. So yeah, you end up paying $41 with Writer or $45 with Visual Studio. Or if you want Resharper, which basically Resharper is kind of like the helper that comes included for free in Writer, you can get it also for $349. And I do recommend getting Resharper. So like Resharper or Writer, basically like the JetBrains helper is really good at kind of like solving issues. For example, here, like I have a console.readline and into a string, and it's like, hey, like that might be null if the user doesn't enter anything. So make it null and then make this null as well. So, like minor errors like this one was super minor. It kind of fixes your code, and it's kind of like having a senior engineer behind you telling you how to fix your code as you type it instead of waiting for the pull request and getting yelled at by the senior engineer. So it not only helps you write better code, it also helps you to learn, because you can be like, oh, wait, why is this right? Why is this wrong? Basically, you get that for free in Writer, or you can get Resharper in Visual Studio. So after that, let's take a look at performance. So basically in here, I measured with a very large solution, basically my work solution, where we have 60 or 60 plus projects, millions of lines of code, and really tested it to the limits, because, if I just open like a small test project, both of them are going to be extremely fast, extremely responsive. So in here, I was trying to find like which one is better at large projects and if there is any issues with each one of them. I did see Resharper and Writer struggle with files that are 10,000 lines. Should they be 10,000 lines long? Maybe not. Maybe we should break them up, but we did see that. Opening the program. So the first stat I have here is opening the program. That's when you click the program and click open, and like the solution picker comes up. Visual Studio improved a lot in that, and now it opens in less than a second or a second, versus Writer that takes 8 seconds. My guess there is Visual Studio started doing stuff in the background while loading, just to they know the user is going to take a few seconds to click. So, show the menu and then open it. And then opening the solution, once that menu comes up and you select the solution, both open it fairly quickly. Technically, Visual Studio was faster. However, Visual Studio plus Resharper, it took 20 seconds to load Resharper. So yeah, the solution opened in 4 seconds. Now you can start typing. However, Resharper took 20 seconds to open. Something to keep in mind. Those two metrics don't really affect that much because you're doing them once a day. The next one is build solution. So this one is one of the biggest differences. And the reason for that, even though they're both using .NET Build, the reason for that is because JetBrains Writer is actually able to parallelize the dependencies. So it makes it that if you have two dependencies that do not depend on each other, they'll build at the same time, and then, just makes it more efficient than Visual Studio, at least by default. And I haven't found a way to also do that parallel build thing. It builds everything linearly. So, that takes a little bit longer. And I don't know why the Visual Studio plus Resharper took a few more seconds. The next one was build until servers interactive. That one For some reason, Blazor is really slow at that. So I was like, I want to see if there's a difference there. There's no difference. They're all within the margin of error, but I still left it in. So you guys know I tested it. Then run test, as you can see by the build times, I didn't rebuild. I just said like, okay, I have already built it. I want to run the test. Rider was a second faster, but still within the margin of error. So I wouldn't really read that much into that. The last thing is RAM using it. This is where like you might have to make a decision of which one to get. So based on the performance, if you have a computer with not that much RAM, you might be running in a laptop that doesn't have a powerful CPU. You'll probably have to get Visual Studio. Yes, Rider's a little better on the interact. It feels like faster and everything, but it does eat a bunch of RAM. So if you can see here running it, to be fair, it's a really big Blazor solution, but it takes 9 gigabytes of RAM versus Visual Studio. It kind of stayed at 4. And then after debugging, Visual Studio still stayed at 4 and Rider stayed at 7.6. I am running in a very powerful computer because my solution is very big. So I'm running a Ryzen 7900X with 64 gigs of RAM. And, sometimes Windows is more generous when you have big RAM to give more RAM to the program. So I don't know how they would run, but this is a big change that like Visual Studio did. So last time I did that, Visual Studio was actually less efficient than Rider. And they really tightened their belts in the last year and a half, made it more efficient. Other than that, let's look at the different features that might make you decide. So Visual Studio, one of the pros with Visual Studio is faster adoption. So like if you're using Maui or like you like using the newest Microsoft technologies, they do adopt them faster because their engineers need them and they use Visual Studio. Other than that, Visual Studio also has better AI without the GitHub Copilot, so it's kind of hard to get it to do it on command. But basically, when you're typing stuff, it'll try to like think of what you're gonna type. So if you're not paying for GitHub Copilot and everything, Visual Studio has a little bit better than Rider. So yeah, those are kind of like the two main things that Visual Studio does better, and that's why I kind of changed to Rider, because Rider, one of the things that it didn't used to have back then when I did it was paste special for JSON classes. So now you can do Control Q and do paste special, and you can paste a JSON as a class, which before it was a only Visual Studio feature. This is a life changer. So if you do a lot of JSON serializing, this will save you a lot of time. Other than that, you have better kind of like user experience with the typing, better kind of navigation, shortcuts. It's something you get used to it. As I said, in the last time, I was more used to Visual Studio. Now I'm more used to Rider. I feel snappier going through the solution, going through the files. And also it has support on Mac. So Visual Studio before used to have really shitty support on Mac. Now they were like, hey, don't use Visual Studio on Mac. It's end of life. Just use VS Code. So if you want to use the same kind of like IDE on Mac and Windows, if you're developing stuff for Mac, Rider is the way to go. That's actually how I got introduced to Rider. I wanted a decent IDE for Mac because I was working on Mac project and I learned about Rider, and then the rest is history. In conclusion, if you can afford Rider, including the price plus the hardware that it requires to run, I definitely recommend it. Resharper, also a great tool to make it more usable. If you're using Visual Studio, it will help you be a better developer. It will help you write faster code. Definitely recommend Rider. If you're starting or you're running on a laptop that doesn't have enough power, Visual Studio will do the job. It's a great IDE. I mean, I used it for 10 years. It's just Rider's a little bit better. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. If I missed some critical features, please let me know and down in the comments, and also share them with others so they can learn about them. That's how I learn about half of the features. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.